The stream. There's going to be people yell at me. What does it mean to fill the earth? There's a built-in illustration right here this morning. Is this auditorium filled? No. So what's under consideration when he tells them to be fruitful and fill the earth? This is Genesis 9 and verse 1. What is God's desire? If he told them to fill the earth, if he wants mankind to fill the earth. I'm sorry? Okay, that there be a populated earth, the whole earth. That they spread and increase, and that the earth be filled, or, for lack of a better term, brought to capacity. Have every space. Are they supposed to be trying to stay together and limit themselves to one place? And the answer is no, they're supposed to be trying to fill the earth, to populate the earth. When we get to chapter 11, some of that's been going on. Chapter 10 is primarily a chapter about genealogy. Actually, there's one other verse I want to pick up from chapter 10, and that's verse 25. As we're going through this genealogy and describing the nations that descended from Noah, that's what chapter 10 is doing, is showing all the various nations that arose out of Noah and his descendants. In verse 25 it says, to Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's names was Joktan. Now, that phrase, in his days the earth was divided, is the subject of chapter 11. Okay, it's not described or explained what is meant by that in verse 25 of chapter 10. It just gives us a place marker. This is where the earth was divided. Okay, so what is that all about? Well, we find out in chapter 11. So this is what it says in chapter 11. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And I'm going to stop right there because we need to define what we're talking about. Who is the whole earth? Or what is the whole earth? Or the people. It is not talking about the terrestrial ball that floats in space. Sometimes the term earth is talking about the material world. Sometimes earth is talking about what? The actual elements that the earth is made of. Sometimes it's talking about the people who populate it. This is one of those cases. The earth had one language and the same words. Is that redundant? One language and the same words? It's not redundant. So what's it saying? They were completely in agreement. They had no problems communicating. They understood one another. And I'll give you just a simple, for instance. We have, what language do we speak in the United States? What language do they speak in England? Do we use the same words? No, not at all. We call things by, even though we speak the same language, we call things by different words, and that can, in fact, create what? Confusion. If I talk about a bonnet in the United States, most people think of what? A lady's hat. If you talk about a bonnet in England, more than likely, what are you talking about? The hood of a car. If we said the hood, most folks in England would go, the what? By the way, the trunk of a car in England is referred to as the boot. They don't, it's the end, it's the bottom, it's the boot. They didn't have the, or we don't have the same words. Australia speaks English as well. Do we have the same words that they use? No. Can we understand one another? Yeah, to an extent. Can we misunderstand one another? Yes. What's being described here is that they had one language and the same words. They had a common lexicon. The word choices, the word uses, the word definitions, all of these words were used to mean the same thing, and they were all understood the same way. They had complete and free communication with one another. And as people migrated, what does the word migrated mean? Moved, particularly from one location to another. So they're doing exactly what God told them to do, right? These generations are increasing. They're having children. They're being fruitful. They're multiplying. And they're migrating. They are filling the earth. That's exactly what God said He wanted done after the flood, right? As the people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, and the tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." So what did they postulate to do as a people? So that's it. They're moving along. They find a place. They like this place, and they say, "Hey, we've got a brilliant idea. We need to make ourselves great." And the way you make yourself great is how? You build a big city. And you populate it. And you have a lot of people. And with a lot of people, generally comes what? A lot of wealth and influence. There are basically a handful of states in the United States that can decide who the leader of this nation is. If you take New York and California and Texas and Florida and Ohio and put them together, they pretty much can decide who the president is. Why? Because they're so populous. There's so many people. With people come influence and power, notoriety, wealth. You get a lot of people who are working. You have a lot of production. You get a lot of production. You get a lot of wealth. Why do people live in cities? You ever thought about that? Folks that live in the country go, "I have no idea why anybody would live in a city." There are things there. There are opportunities there that you don't have anywhere else. There are people around to help you when you need something. A lot of older people who live in the country end up moving into the cities. Why? Now, older people. Closer to the doctors and the hospitals. And the eventual care that they need, because that stuff's not available to them where they're at. But it is available in the cities. So there is some value to cities. People see that value in cities. People want the power and the strength that comes along with it. The safety, let us make bricks and burn them. Let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top to the heavens. What's the point in this tower with the top in the heavens? By the way, in case you grew up in Bible classes like I did, and people teaching you that they were trying to build a way to get to God, that is not what this is saying. I don't think anyone is so foolish to think that they can build a tower that will actually reach the dwelling place of God. What's the idea of building a tower with its top in the heavens? Look, we still do this very thing today. What do the great cities of the world actually fight over? Who has the tallest building? One of the ways that you prove that you're a great place is to build the tallest building. Not to mention, when you have such things, what's true about them? Well, from distance, you can actually see them and find them. And so if we build this great city and we have a tower, there's two things that provides. One, these towers generally are towers of security, safety, You put your lookouts on them who can watch over things and look for the bad guys that are coming. Secondly, it can be seen from a great distance and people can find their way home. And so it was a way for them to be a great and powerful city that attracted people and kept them together. And that's in fact what they say that their goal is. Let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves. What does it mean, make a name for ourselves? They talk about just naming the city like we did. Like, we're going to call ourselves Lafayette. And the folks over in Scott decided that they're going to call themselves Scott. Is that what it means, make for ourselves a name? They wanted a reputation. We want to be a great and powerful people, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. This last phrase is the one that's really important. What had God said? Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. That process is taking place and people are migrating. But now this people has settled in and said, you know what? We don't want to migrate anymore. We want to stay here. We want to become great. We want to do the exact opposite of what God has instructed to be done. We want to stay here and not be dispersed among the earth. That was directly contrary to what God desired. God wanted these people to be prosperous and to multiply, and He wanted them to spread. And they said, we don't want to spread anymore. We want to stay here. And we want to protect against that and influence people not to leave by building a great city with a great tower and a great reputation so that we can hold the next generation here and the generation after that and the generation after that. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. Was God not aware of what was going on, so He had to travel down there and see it? And so what's the point of verse 5, that the Lord came down to see the city? If we keep reading, I think it becomes pretty evident. The Lord said, behold, they're one people. They all have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing they purpose to do will now be impossible for them. And let's go down and confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Going back to verse 5, when it says the Lord came down to see the city, it simply means that He engaged with these people. Yes, ma'am. Keep talking. Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, He changed the language. Now, why did He change the language? Well, He explained why that was necessary. And also from this explanation, we learn why we're told at the beginning of the chapter that they all had the same language and that they all used the same words. He says, the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. What did God mean when He said that? I don't really want to do this, but I'm I'm going to have to